Genesis House and the Friends in Recovery podcast are proud to bring you Answering the Call, the First Responder podcast. Join your hosts, Mike the Podfather and Jersey Ed, as they address the real issues in health and wellness for first responders. From physical and mental health to relationships and work-life balance, we leave no stone unturned. Answering the Call, the First Responder podcast is available on Facebook, Podbean, iTunes, and YouTube, as well as iHeartRadio. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Now, here are your friends in recovery answering the calls.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Answering the Call, the First Responders podcast. I am Jersey Ed, along with my co-host, Skylar, at noontime. What's your name, Skylar?
My name's Skylar Noon. So I just figure, might as well put it together,
Noontime with Sky. That's her name. So the Podfather, unfortunately, isn't here today. He said to tell everybody he's in Hawaii, which is a total BS. He's not in Hawaii. I think he had to run around and go get some Christmas presents. So, but he'll be back next show. And listen, Sky, I took off 2 shows last week, right?
We all got self-care.
Yeah, self-care. So, so today, our guest is Keith Abare. And I'm probably not pronouncing it Abare. I think that's how you pronounce it. And he's a corrections officer. We're going to bring him in on. He's a retired corrections officer. I'm going to bring him in on a minute. But Sky, here's the funny thing. This is ATC Answering the Call, the First Responders podcast. And you and I have nothing to do with first. Well, we did. First responders. We got chased by the cops when we were.
Yeah, my brother's a firefighter. I mean,
yeah,
it's cool.
There you go. Yeah. So, but Podfather will be back next week, and I think Sky, you and I can handle the interview with Keith.
I'm excited to hear all about it too.
Exactly. But real quick, I want to let everybody know if you want to give us a call, if you have any questions for us or any questions for Keith, call us at 617-379-1163 or email us at help@friendsandrecoverypodcast.com. And you can get a hold of us that way. Or if you want to go to Friends in Recovery Community Support or Friends in Recovery Podcast on our Facebook pages, Instagram, wherever, whatever social media is. So you can get a hold of us at those places, like our pages. I think there's a Answering the Call page, right, Skylar? Isn't there?
Yes.
So go to Answering the Call, the First Responders podcast on Facebook and like us, and you'll see this video there of Keith. So our our guest today is Keith Abare. He's retired corrections officer, 22 years with the Massachusetts Department of Corrections. Last 5 years at the DOC, he was with the Employee Assistance Unit. Keith retired in 2020. That was not too long ago, of August. Prior to the DOC, 4 years as a 911 dispatcher in Fitchburg, Massachusetts. Guys, I had a tooth pulled. That's why I wasn't here last week, and my tongue is killing me. So, and I just did another podcast. So, anyways, he started working for Aware Recovery Care in September of 2020 as a first responders community liaison, which I think is really, really cool. And we're going to find out all about that. But Keith, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's been a long time. We've been talking about it for a while. It's finally here.
We have, absolutely. We definitely have. Keith and I, Skylar, go way, way back. Keith is actually has referred plenty of clients, plenty of his corrections officers to Genesis House. And that's how we first met. And we just kind of built a friendship up. And now he's doing a couple of things, after retirement, and he's doing some good things. Keith was always there to help, always there to, Ed, can you help me with this one? Can you do this? What do you think about that? And I think his love for the corrections and their well-being was amazing. And I think it's because you've been there, you've done it, you were inside the walls, and what that can wreak havoc on people's lives. Talk a little bit about that, and tell us a little bit more.
Yeah. So, that cumulative stress that every day being inside prison, it adds up, and it's, we talk about it, right? How it affects you, and those critical incidences and things that are normal to us aren't normal for normal people, if you're at the beach with your family and there's a car accident, there's like a bloody body on the sidewalk, people are freaking out. We can just step over that with that kid and go get an ice cream, right? Not normal. and how that affects us over time. And more importantly, or as important, how it affects our loved ones. That's what we bring home, or what we think we're not bringing home, but we really are. And that kind of that transference on the people we care about. I like to focus on that. And again, Ed, you're right. I bounced stuff off you for years. I still do, because I always got, good information, and I always got help from you. So I do want to thank you for that, for all those years of just helping our first responders. And it was a quick phone call too. And I knew they were in good hands.
Yeah. Thanks. Well, and Skylar and I just off the air before, we were just talking about John Lackman, who you probably know. I don't know if you know this, but John died about 2 months ago.
Sorry to hear that.
He had some cancer, but he was he started that first responders program, that what it is today. And it's great. You've referred plenty of clients to it, and a lot of them have become, sober and actually some are even working on a unit where you worked.
They certainly are. And, we were talking about that. I just talked to that gentleman a little while ago, a good friend of mine. He's been on the show. Yep. Changed his life going to Genesis House. It changed his life. Did end up working on the unit with me. By the way, he's also recently retired as well.
Ah, okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah, following my footsteps. We had some heart-to-heart conversations about, we were talking about it before the show, the quality of life. When is enough, and when is it time for that self-care and taking care of yourself? So yeah, he's since retired as well.
Good. So let's go back to the beginning, 22 years as a corrections officer. And I'm guessing 5 of those years were in the employee assistance. But what was it like being inside the wall? What was it like living that day to day? I'm sure it was a different life than the job that we have, and the job that you have now. It would probably, I don't know if it was stressful. Tell us a little bit about it, because we have a lot of first responders listening. There are some corrections officers, but corrections is definitely different than police and fire and EMT. It's the highest divorce rate, the highest suicide rate. It's just these crazy numbers, crazy figures that you guys have versus the other first responders.
Yeah, and I kind of talked about it earlier, right? We normalize a lot of things. We kind of become desensitized to the worst of the worst in life. When you first start, it's like every day is like this big deal, right? You see something, or you see maybe a suicide attempt from an inmate or something, and it's a big deal. And then you really become desensitized to it. And when I realized really what it meant is, they started like a friends and family program at the Mass DOC. You could have your loved ones go in, they do a tour. Everyone said the same thing to me when that first door shuts, that big metal trap, when you're going in, everybody jumps. So that kind of made me think back. I'm like, yeah, I remember the first time I did that, it was like that big metal. You're inside now, right? You can't get out. Somebody has to let you out. You can't just leave on your own free will. And then it becomes so normal to go in there. It becomes so normal to see the things that we see. And again, that being desensitized to some bad things, and how that translates to coming home. And maybe a spouse, maybe something's going on at home with your spouse, and they think it's like something very serious. And because of the environment that you work in, it's really not that big of a deal to you. And then how that can cause some issues in relationships. We also have, our divorce rate is astronomical. And this is some of the reasons why it's difficult to come home and say, I have to bring the dog to the vet when you just saw someone try to take their own life today. And it matters to the family, right? But it might not be such a big deal to you in that every day-to-day life. So we've become very desensitized to things that we probably shouldn't, and how that affects our loved ones.
So you live this double life, basically. You live this life as a corrections officer, seeing this bad or crazy stuff. I guess bad is the right word, crazy stuff. And then you come home and you're like, oh, I'm Keith, the husband. I'm Keith, the dad. I'm Keith, the guy who walks the dog. Meanwhile, all this shit's boiling up in your head. Like, holy crap, I just seen some guy kill himself, or there was just a huge fight, or was a gangbang, going down here, and or these guys were demanding this, and what do I do? That is insane. I mean, that's just two different worlds you live in.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And we don't want to expose our loved ones to all this stuff, right?
Yes.
We want to protect them. That's what we want to do. But you really can't.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying your spouse or your loved one should know every gory little detail, but it's okay to come home and say, I had a bad day. I need 10 minutes. I need to go to the gym. I need to go for a walk. I need to bring my daughter on the swing set. Whatever you need, whatever you do for that self-care and whatever you do to decompress, it's very important to at least have that open line of communication with your loved ones. It's okay to have a bad day. We put on this uniform and it's this shield, right? It's okay to take that down with the people, you're supposed to be vulnerable with and have those moments to say, I had a bad day. It's okay. And again, have those open lines of communication. I can remember, my wife, if I got hurt at work, I wanted to make sure I was out of the hospital before the end of my shift, so she wouldn't know what was going on.
Oh, geez.
Right. Or if you had to go to the hospital, you got hurt or whatever, right? Even if it's a little thing, you don't want them to know. Or God forbid you come home with a cast on your hand. They're like, what happened? You want to protect them from that. But do you really? Even to this day, my daughter's 12. And if we go out to dinner to the 99 or something and the waitress walks to the middle of the restaurant, says, oh, here's your table, sir. My little girl starts to laugh. She's like, my daddy won't sit here. He has to sit in the back with his back against the wall, looking at the exit sign.
Wow.
And to me, that's normal. To my family, that's normal. Is it really normal, though? What we call normal? It's not. And if, that vicarious trauma over time that I have to be able to see where I'm sitting, see my exits, survey the scene, so to speak, know every person in the restaurant, you watch hands, you just do things that's not considered normal, but it is in our world. And then you end up only socializing with correction officers or police officers or firefighters or first responders. That becomes your outside family as well. And it's a very strange subculture.
How did you break that? Because it sounds like you broke that. It sounds like you tell your wife, the open line of communication, as you called it. How did you break that? How did you notice it? Because a lot of people don't notice until the divorce happens, till the maybe the suicide attempt or the drinking or whatever. You noticed it and you were able to correct it and say, honey, I do need a time to myself. It's what it sounds like to me anyways.
And that's what I was going to say, is that there's got to be some time when you come home to take that armor off. Because like you said, you showed up, it's like armor and you have to be you again. And that you can't just switch face. You got to take it off and give some time to yourself.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was fortunate. I've been with my wife a long time. So she's walked this walk with me. She's been going through this journey with me. And again, having that open line of communication, it's okay to have a bad day or for her to recognize, okay, he's off today. And knowing when to maybe push a little bit to say, hey, do we need to talk? Or, geez, he hasn't been home from work 5 days in a row. And when he does come home, he's drunk. Hey, what's up? And without making a big deal out of it, understanding, what we go through, understanding, I crazy stories or whatever, but, I can remember my wife coming home or I text her, hey, it's been a bad day at work. And she'll be like, I'll meet you in the garage. So she knew I was going to get undressed in the garage. She was going to have to wash my bloody uniform, walk in the house naked to take a shower. Like things like that. I was fortunate. She walked that walk from day one with me.
Good.
Not everybody is as fortunate because it does take a huge toll on the family. And I took, when I was doing the employee assistance, every time, this job hasn't changed me. I'm the same person I was, when I started. And I would always ask, I'm just asking the question. If I asked your loved ones and your spouse the same question, what would they say? And they kind of look at you.
Exactly.
Well, okay. Well, then I'm just asking the question, has the job changed you? And then the other funny thing, kind of made a joke out of it, is, have you ever heard from your loved ones, don't talk to me like I'm a fucking inmate?
Yeah.
And they laugh. Oh, so you have heard that. So again, we're not putting blame here. We're just asking questions.
Mm-hmm.
If your loved ones say that to you, has the job changed you?
Just, yes. Yeah.
Has it
And
affected your family?
That's deep.
That's crazy that,
Right.
yeah. And you bring that home. So the one thing that I just wrote down and what you're talking about is that drop in the bucket. It gets dropped in the bucket a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit here. And then you become that corrections officer 24/7. You become that police, whatever it is. And you don't realize that bucket can be emptied at any time. And you don't have to let that bucket be filled up with the corrections or the drugs or the alcohol or whatever it is, or, whatever you're dealing with. You can empty it out. And it sounds like that's what you did. You were able to empty it out and sit there with your wife and talk to her about it. And I'm sure it wasn't perfect. I'm sure there was, some tough times.
Still not perfect.
Yeah, of course not. But you're able to get through it, good times and bad times. And that's resilience, that's, you're able to bounce back from that. Now, EAP, Employee Assistance Program, that was your last 4 or 5 years. That's where you and I met. And explain what that is and how a corrections officer can use an EAP program, and what it does for the corrections officer himself.
Yeah, so the Employee Assistance Unit for the Mass DOC, anyhow, that's my experience, is there's I think 11 of them now, or 12. They've hired some people since I've retired. They're peer counselors, so it's peer driven. And then we have a clinician as the director of the unit. So we also have that clinical backing, right? We can always go to that person if we need some advice on something. And basically it's anything that employee is struggling with or their family members. So there's, probably 4,000 correction officers plus their families. So that team of 11 or 12 is busy. Anything that affects that employee, maybe they're going through a divorce, maybe it's financial, maybe it's substance use. Anything that's affecting that employee, we would try to help with, or we would find them resources. Anything from suicidality to financial issues or whatever, any mental health issues. And that team does a really, really good job of having resources available at all times. And they can call the duty station, or every person on the unit has a cell phone with the number published throughout the department. And then we do trainings. We do in-service trainings. We have a couple-hour block during service. 1 year we did, trauma to addiction, resilience. And so they do different things, to get the team out there, put a face to the name. Anybody can look on a computer and see a name, but it's nice to put a face to a name. So we get to see them during trainings. And that team, especially in the time of COVID, the director has done a really good job of keeping them relevant. They've done like a Zoom COVID series. Anybody that had COVID that wanted to talk about how it affected them, they did that. They do like a coffee talk on Tuesdays, a Zoom coffee talk, so people can log on. So yeah, the directors really come up with some innovative ideas to keep that team relevant right now during these crazy times.
Good. And we're going to take a quick break here. When we get back, Keith, we're going to talk about what you're doing now. You retire to go back to work.
Right.
So the Podfather did that also. We're going to talk about Aware Recovery Care and what you're doing there. And you're doing some really cool stuff with the first responders right now. And when we come back, we'll pick your brain about that.
Sounds good.
Answering the Call of First Responders podcast. We'll be right back.
You're first. First to respond. First to put others' lives before your own. And in an emergency, you need a network that puts you first. That connects you to technology, to each other, and to other agencies. Built with and for first responders. FirstNet, the only congressionally authorized wireless network for first responders. Because putting you first is our job.
Since 1992, Genesis House has been helping real people heal from addiction on their private recovery campus in beautiful Palm Beach County, Florida. Their family-owned program is accredited by the Joint Commission and offers detox and dual diagnosis treatment in a comfortable and confidential setting. At Genesis House, they focus on treating the underlying causes of addiction. Their comprehensive approach includes psychiatric care, individual and small group therapy, trauma healing techniques, and holistic care including yoga, massage, and animal-assisted therapy. After treatment, their clients enjoy the lifelong support of a nationwide network of Genesis House alumni. Call Genesis House today at 1-800-737-0933 to speak with someone who understands. Visit them on the web at www.genesishouse.net. It's time to start your journey to a long and successful recovery.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Answering the Call, the First Responders podcast. And our guest here is Keith Abare. I'm also here with Skylar, my host guest for today. The Podfather is apparently in Hawaii. That's what he's saying. So I wish I was in Hawaii with him. Right. Listen, the Podfather won't fly down to Philadelphia, let alone to freaking Hawaii. Okay. So we know that's total BS. All right. So, but I think he's doing some Christmas shopping. But Keith, we were just talking during the break. You said you have some experience. You know, what the commercial we just heard was from the FirstNet First Responders built by AT&T. And I always ask my guests after the commercial, because have they used it? And most of them have. And I have not. I've very rarely heard of them because I'm not a first responder. But you said you used FirstNet.
Well, it's a service for first responders. So during like a natural disaster or some type of critical incident, those lines would stay open for first responders to be able to connect and disseminate information.
Yeah.
So it's just a service that you have on your cell phone.
Specifically for you guys, for the first responders. Right. Good. And they're a great sponsor, and I'm learning more and more from our guest, Skylar. I know you haven't been on the show too much, but every time I ask somebody, they have more information about it, and it's fascinating. One person told us that they have these mobile satellite things. So if something if a tower goes down in an area, they can bring us a tower to the area for the first responders where there's a disaster. It's amazing what these guys are doing. And after 9/11, we learned a lot. These poor guys who were trying to go up and down a building didn't have any communication, and they were just walking into their death. So thank God for this FirstNet built by AT&T. It's going to save a lot of lives for civilians and first responders. So, so Keith, we were just talking about Keith Abare. It's pronounced Abare, right?
Abare. Yes.
Corrections officer for the Mass Department of Corrections. And Keith is now working with Aware Recovery Care. And we had somebody on the show from Aware about a year ago. And they were, I forgot the guy's name. You might know him. I will have to look it up if anybody knows the show that we had. Just send us an email, but it's in there. But tell us a little about what you do. And I think this is such a great idea for first responders.
Yeah. So following my retirement, I knew I wanted to go into the recovery field somewhere. And a friend of mine made the connection for me to Aware Recovery Care. And I'd never heard of them. They were just opened up in Massachusetts, and they needed someone to help the first responders. They wanted someone that's, kind of been there, can talk the talk, explain the program to them. So what Aware does, we are an in-home addiction treatment for people who suffer with substance abuse. We do everything in home unless somebody needs that higher level of care. And that's when we partner with like a Genesis House, send them to, get, medically stabilized and then back into our care. So what that looks like for our folks is once they come into our care, we get them in touch with an addiction psychiatrist, see if there's any co-occurring disorders, any mental health issues going on, see if they need any medications prescribed. So that addiction psychiatrist will be their prescriber. And then the next person on the team is a licensed marriage family therapist. As we know, usually someone suffering from substance use, the family's suffering a little bit as well. So again, the licensed marriage family therapist works alone with the family, and that family is whoever that client identifies as their family. It might not be traditional mom, dad, brother, sister, cousin, whatever, but whoever they identify, whoever their allies are. And again, not to dig up the past and do all that work, but just to educate those family members on addiction and what it means and what the client might be going through, especially in that first responder realm, right? Maybe explaining that cumulative trauma that we go through. So that's the next person on the team. Then we have our care coordinator. The care coordinator is called like the quarterback of the team. They collaborate with any outside providers, therapists, physicians. As we know, sometimes people struggling with addiction, at least my experience when I was on the EAP, they were, hey, when's the last time you saw your primary care? And they laugh. So 10 years ago. So we'll find them the primary care. We find people that are in network with their insurance. The idea is on that 53rd week, because we're a 52-week program, we're in the home for 52 weeks. Our 53rd week, they have people in network, in their community that they can fall back on if there's a life change or something. So that care coordinator will collaborate with all the outside providers, get all the information to the team, just what's going on. They collaborate with everyone on the team to make sure their medical needs are met. If the client goes to an appointment, what the results of that appointment are, just so everybody's on the same page. The next is the 2 certified recovery advisors. These are the folks that'll be in the home with them the most. We try to age, gender, story match as close as possible. So again, we're talking about first responders. First responder comes in and, we have former first responders on our team that can talk to this person. So again, just to build that relationship. What our program looks like is the first couple weeks, 4 to 5 times a week, we'll be in the home. And as time goes on, we back that down. The CRAs, they have a curriculum similar to any recovery center, right? And we do that over 52 weeks. The meetings will go from an hour to 2 hours. And then, they do things like they try to get their clients back into sober living communities. What did you do before addiction took your life into a different path? And they help them do that. Maybe, I don't know, maybe they want to go ballroom dancing or something. They would bring them there. They would, even, hey, I want to go to an AA meeting, but it's scary that first time, right? To walk into a room with people. They'll go with them. So, they have this curriculum that they use, but they also try to help them get back into some sober living activities. So those 2 CRAs, again, age, gender, story matched as close as possible.
Nice.
Well, that I did not know.
Yeah, that's really extensive.
First of all, COVID came through, and you and I haven't been able to sit down and talk. Right. And you got in. I guess you started with them in August, but that service for first responders is amazing. 52 weeks, excuse me, in the home. And a lot of first responders, we do those 12-step meetings, and actually, I didn't even talk about that, but I'll talk about that at the end of the show. But we do 12-step meetings, and a lot of first responders sometimes hesitate to come on there. And when they do come on, they don't turn the camera on, which is great for Zoom and great for the first responders on Zoom, because they don't have to talk and they can get that in. But if they don't have to go out somewhere and they can get kind of acclimated to treatment in their own home, that is amazing. That is amazing. And I didn't know it was 52 weeks. And that's like you guys break it down from everything to, getting from all the way down to like almost a sober life coach you give them towards the end.
Yeah.
Right. And again, the flexibility of the program, the beauty of it is, let's say on the 30th week, something popped up in their life, right? And now we're only seeing the client twice a week. On that 30th week, something pops up, they lose their job, maybe they have a recurrence, maybe they drank or whatever. Now we can ramp it back up. So we're flexible where if something's going well and we have therapy involved, we have a good therapist, they go into their 12-step meetings, we can back off. And then if something happens, we have the ability and the flexibility to ramp back up and maybe support them a little more.
That's awesome.
It's interesting. It was very interesting to me. I'd never heard of it. It was explained to me, and I jumped on board.
So, what's the, God, I'm just trying to think what about the best words here. What's the success rate? I hate when people say that when they tell me what's a success rate, but somebody living in their own home, being comfortable and being, I think you get a little bit more vulnerable. I think you can sit there with your therapist without anybody being around, without being a door, without without somebody down the hallway. I think they can get a little bit more vulnerable. And I think recovery happens probably at a much quicker rate and a much more stable rate.
Yeah. Again, you just said, right. You hate numbers and how we how we gauge success is engagement into our program, right? It's not necessarily abstinence. Again, we understand things happen in life, but the science behind our program is if you stay engaged for 52 weeks, you have an 80% chance of living a sober life.
Nice.
But again, all 52 weeks, right? And our average stay is 260 days. That's our average. So 52-week program, our average is at 260 days because things happen, right? Insurances, people change jobs or insurances. So yeah, our 80% success rate is engagement in our program. And that's how we gauge the success.
When you go to their house, does that bring you more like accountability too? Like, you can't hide some stuff that you're doing at home versus when you go to IOP. But I'm just thinking as an addict, I'm thinking.
Well, just think about it, right? Family night. You go to a treatment program for family night. Everybody's dressed up nice and everybody's proper. But we're in the home 52 weeks.
That's what I mean.
Sometimes up to 4 or 5 times a week. Yeah, we get a really, really good gauge on the family dynamics. What's
going on?
Recycling bucket overflowing with empties. Is the spouse engaged? Is the spouse home? Are the children engaged? Really that family dynamic, we get a really good look into the window.
And Keith, you're already built to like be an observer. So it's like, you're able to see in the house. No, seriously, that's a good thing because then you're able to help them more because you're going to see where they're BS, pulling your leg,
Right. And the folks that are going into the home, we usually like our first home visit. Where did you hide your drugs and alcohol?
Mm-hmm.
I get it. You clean your house out. Maybe you forgot.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just go over these hiding places. And it empowers that client to get rid of anything or to be honest, or, just to keep them accountable. And then again, you're in their home. So you get is the home clean? Is it not? So you get stay out of the kids' rooms, and all that, things like that. But you do get a really good look into the window of their lives.
Wow.
Yeah, because instead of success rate, it's like you kind of can just see like patterns over the year. Like with your client, you notice the patterns, you notice your client's days that kind of seem off. So that's awesome that you guys, it's a great way to really help somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And again, with that care coordinator, everything gets reported back. So that care coordinator, again, is making sure everybody on the team is the client. Did they have a bad week? Why? What's going on? And then being able to work with the outside therapist. Again, we're not trying to take the clients from it. If you already have a therapist, it's less work for us. Great. We don't have to find you a therapist. Now we can just get that release of information and work with that therapist. So if you're having a therapist sees you up once a week, maybe for an hour, maybe once every other week, or if we're there 4 or 5 times that first week, now we can report back to that therapist. Hey, I know you have an appointment coming up next week. This is what's been going on. Here's some issues, or they've been going to all their 12-step meetings. Everything's going well. Just to have that, again, that open line of communication with everybody involved in the care.
Yeah. And that's why I said the recovery probably happens quicker, or the relapses are shorter, or the stress or whatever it is probably narrowed down because first of all, you're in their home. You're like Skylar said, you're seeing their routine, you're seeing what's going on. And that's where it happens. Like it doesn't happen at the treatment center. The relapses don't happen at the IOP. It happens in the home, it happens. Like, I don't mean exactly in a home, but it could happen at the liquor store, the bar, but they're coming home and hiding from it all. Yes. And they can't hide there.
Right. And then we also have the ability, we have, accountability tools like SoberLink, and, we can do drug tests and alcohol testing if need be. Those CRAs really do. They build that report. Again, age, gender, story matched. So you have that report. The person you're sitting across from has been there. They're not always people in recovery, but most of our CRAs are people in long-term recovery. Again, age, story, gender match to build that rapport. So yeah, I had a bad day. It's okay to have a bad day, but now talk to that CRA about it. And what happened? What were the triggers? How did you get through it? So when it happens next time, we already have some tools in the toolbox to help you through it, because everybody's different, right? So for those CRAs to get to know that client really, really in depth and personally, and being able to help them, further in their recovery, it's a very, very cool model.
I want to link something what you just said to something you said before the break. Bad day. You were one of the fortunate ones to come home and tell your wife you had a bad day. You were one of the fortunate ones to come home and have your wife understand, give you your space and that whole 9 yards. You guys had that, like you said, that open line of communication. Most people don't. So when that person comes home, when that first responder comes home, he or she may not be able to tell their spouse or their loved one or whatever that they had a bad day. And maybe that open line of communication is there. But your therapist comes in, sits down and says, when nobody's around, I had a fucking bad day. I can't tell my wife or I can't tell my husband or whatever. And I had a bad day. So that opens up a lot more. And it opens up that whole line of communication to tell your wife or your husband or your loved one. I mean, I can see all this, all this vision that you guys have, how it can keep snowballing to help the client and help the first responder.
And like you said, snowballing to help them, right? Having that CRA that you're comfortable with, right? Maybe you don't have a meeting till next week, but you have that CRA's phone number. So on the way home. So maybe you'll call that CRA on the way home and say, hey, I had a bad day, and have a 10-minute conversation.
Mm-hmm.
When you walk through the door, you don't kick the dog, yell at your spouse, yell at the kids. Maybe it's just enough that you have somebody to say, I had a bad day.
Yep.
To build that relationship with those CRAs, they're a very important part of our program.
Mm-hmm. Well, here's the sad part of it, Keith. People probably go years without saying I had a bad day. So even once a week, if they can say they had a bad day, that's a check in the win column for them. You know what I mean? And then eventually get into that I had a bad day daily or whatever when it does happen,
Right. Now you talk about our first responders, people were calling them all day because they had a bad day. That's what we do, right?
Mm-hmm.
We answer the call.
Yep.
People calling first responders for whatever, because very seldom are you calling the fire police department for something good, right? We go to these people in the worst days of their lives and helping them understand it's okay to have a bad day. You can have a bad day and get treatment in your home, being anonymous. So you might not run into the person you arrested last week at the AA meeting. How important that is for our first responders to be anonymous and get the help that they need.
Absolutely.
It was a very interesting concept for me when it was explained to me, and I bought in pretty quick.
Yeah. I'm sold 100%. Definitely sold. I think it's a great program. And I knew a little bit about it before, but now you explain this, and hopefully the first responders who are listening across the country, across the world, hopefully this will take hold. And Keith, why don't you do this? If there is a first responder, and I don't care if they're in California, if they're, I know you guys can only help in certain states, but at least give them some direction, or maybe the company can start a new program somewhere. Let us know how we can get a hold of you, your website and your company.
Yeah, the website is awarerecoverycare.com. And any first responder that needs to reach out to someone, I'll give them my phone number. It's 978-424-8990. If you're in California, call me. We can at least talk.
Figure something out, yeah.
If I'm that person you need to reach out to because you're having a bad day, make the phone call.
So be it. Yeah, absolutely.
Could you say the email one more time for us?
Awarerecoverycare.com is the website.
Awarerecovery.com.
Awarerecoverycare.com.
Okay.
Awarerecoverycare.com. Keith, that was great. I mean, Jesus, that was great. I mean, the stuff that you guys are doing, it's amazing. And, thank you so much for doing what you did. Thank you for all the years of service in the corrections. That's a long time to be behind those walls. And I'm glad you came out. I'm glad we're still friends and we still talk. That was really important. Usually when people retire, they just go their own way. But, this is good to have you as a connection still.
Well, I got into this field because of people like you, Ed. When someone, it's true. When someone brings up, especially in the DOC recovery, your name pops up, Genesis House pops up, and I just want my name to be as good as yours. Hopefully I help as many people. And thank you for having me on the show.
Thanks, Keith. So Skylar, Keith Abare, Abare, and you did either way, that's it. He's easy. He has an open line of communication, guys. Yeah. And you did a great job, Skylar, filling in for the Podfather, even though either one of us don't have a first responder's background. So that's it, guys. Answering the call, the First Responders Podcast. Stay safe, everybody.